Today's program will include Voice of Hands and Go Away from China. Chris Yu from the Chinese University of Hong Long will also be joining us for a purposeful dialogue and discussions on disability policy in China, focused on deaf education and employment. This session will focus on employment and accessibility in China. I'm very excited for this session and to continue the dialogues that have been going on for the last several weeks concerning this really important project in the US and China, and ways that we can collaborate in our two cultures and our two countries to work on progressing and improving the lives of people with disabilities, particularly deaf individuals in both our countries. I hope you enjoy this program today. Have a great day.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us again this evening. Dr. Amy Knopf, will you come on also, please? So this evening, we are concluding our hey Chris, our 5-week series on deaf education in China, and specifically the US-China partnership. And so this is Chris from Hong Kong. Thank you for joining us from so far away. Chris, I'm going to ask you a favor because you're on at the end of our show or of our meeting and dialogue. So can we have you turn up? There you go. Have you turn off your video until the end. Thank you, Chris. So good to see you. I miss all of you. So this evening, Dr. Amy Knopf and I are here, and we have, I would say, 3 of our good friends from China, Dr. Knopf, right?
Yes.
Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
I'm so excited.
I know. We miss going to China. Yes. So seeing our friends from China fills my heart with joy. And so we're very excited to have this be our last session. Not because it's the last session, but because we have amazing people. Hi, Galway. Nice to see you. Can you hold on your video until when it's your turn? So can you go off? And then we will invite you later. Okay, good. So that was Galway, and we're happy that he is here also. As you know, in the world of Zoom, we never know what's really going to happen. But Amy and I are here. And again, to those of you who have been a part of our 5-week series, which is a part of the bigger 30-day event series celebrating the 30-year anniversary of the ADA. Both Amy and I are very passionate about our work in China. And over the last 20 years, I have met so many amazing people in my journey, including 4 who are here right now. And last night they were over for dinner, and I asked them, what do you want for dinner? And they said, a Minnesota hot dish. So I cooked them a Minnesota tater tot hot dish. Ask me later if you want the recipe. But they loved hot dish. I know, because you're a Southern girl.
I'm a Southern girl. I haven't even had a hot dish.
Okay, I'll cook that for you later. That was Xiao Rong's request. So we had that for dinner last night. And I'm just so thankful that they are here. We're all staying safe through COVID-19 and being incredibly productive, inclusive of this 5-week series on deaf education and employment. I want to also start by saying, forgive me for doing this late. I will do a description of who I am. Again, my name is Dr. Kathryn Johnson. I have short red hair, short on one side, a little bit longer on the other. And I have glasses, green glasses, and I am wearing a black jacket made in Beijing, so it has a little Chinese collar on it. Behind me, there is a log wall, because I live in a log home that my husband and I built a long time ago when we were young. And tonight, we're just excited to be here. Dr. Knopf, could you share an audio description of yourself, please?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It has been a really wonderful 5-week session. And so I'm really happy to wrap up with some old friends of ours. I love, in China, they say the first time that we meet, we're new friends, but the second time we're old friends. So I'm really grateful. I am a white female. I have short, gray, curly, wavish hair. I have purple cat-eye glasses. I'm wearing white headphones and a black sleeveless top, and behind me is a green wall.
Okay,
So,
great.
yeah.
Thank you, Amy. So I want to say that we are focused on, through our series, we're on our last week, and we are focused on employment and accessibility. And so we're going to bring our last 4 weeks together into this evening's discussion. We will have knowledge sharing, I would say, by our colleague and friend, Gao Wei. Gao Wei, to our interpreter, Gao Wei. And he will share about what he is doing in China currently, and then also share about what his hopes are for future employment and accessibility for students who are deaf in China. Hopefully, we will have a colleague, Wei, from Voice of Hands. She's having a little trouble getting onto Zoom. Yeah. And so we will see if we get her. And then we will have Chris, a colleague from Hong Kong, will be sharing about a model program that really reflects upon how, if we want to promote employment opportunities for people who are deaf in China, we need to think back to early education and to kindergarten. And so we've invited him tonight to be a part of our panel to share about an incredible program that they have in Hong Kong. Amy and I visited there with another colleague in December of 2018. Right, yeah. Amy?
Yeah.
And after we were there, we reflected upon that and just said, is there a program like that in the United States? I don't think so.
No, that's what I was going to say. I think his program is really a model for every country, not just for Hong Kong or China, but something that we can adopt as a model here in the US.
Exactly. So we're excited for our lineup tonight of amazing people. And so at this time, I would like to invite Gao Wei. Can you open up, turn on, there you go, your video, Gao Wei? Perfect. So we're gonna switch interpreters, hold on. And remember everyone, we are doing this simultaneously in China on Ding Talk. And so thank you, Kai. Thank you, David. Thank you, Yan Lei with Jilin Hanban. We're very grateful for you sharing your time and your energy to bring access and opportunity to participate to our colleagues in China. Gao Wei, yay, you're here. So good to see you. And
I am. This is Gao Wei, and that's my sign name, and I am from China, and I'm coming to you from China, and I'm happy to see so many of you here. This is my first time online with people in the United States, and the first time to use this, so wow. And I'm happy to be able to come and share my experience. Everything that we have been doing here in China and the work that I've been doing. And for me, I graduated from a college in the United States and then came back to China more than 10 years ago and have been here.
Hey, Gao Wei. Gao Wei, can I stop you? Can I interrupt you? Would you mind for our audience to describe what you look like? This is helpful for people who can't see the screen. So that's why we describe what we look like, where you're sitting, to give them visual information. You mind doing that before going on to your talk? Yes.
Go ahead. Can you describe yourself now? Can you describe yourself? For example, I'm a male with black hair. Can you, Gao Wei, describe yourself now for our group of people in the audience?
Okay, oh, so you want me to describe myself. Okay, so I am a man. I'm about 45 years old. I've got black hair. I've got a little bit of gray. I'm wearing a black short-sleeved shirt, black blue-ish short-sleeved shirt. I am actually here in my office, and so behind me you see a bookshelf.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, if you can continue, go back your history, your story about education, okay? Thank you, Gao Wei.
Okay, so I will move on. So as I was saying,
Okay, so I'm going to share different comparisons between China and the United States and work opportunities. Hold on, let's get him to hold on. Hold on, back up. We need to catch up the interpreter. Yeah, can you start again, please? With technology, to our participants, thank you for your patience. Gao Wei, is that okay, Amy?
Yeah, I was just going to remind him that we're interpreting between ASL to CSL to Chinese spoken language. So we have to talk a little bit slower for the interpreters to catch up. Yeah.
Okay, back up again. Thank you.
okay.
Okay.
So I work here at a college, and the students that I work with are all hearing. I do have experience working at another university with students who are deaf, so I know both and I know the difference. So with the hearing students, they're graduate students, and they are beginning their journey into employment. And the deaf students, when they graduate, they are going through a similar process, but it is very different. So in China, the situation here, the Chinese government has established policies for both groups of students. For deaf students, disabled students, deaf students are put in schools and programs for disabled students, whereas hearing students are placed in fields of study to prepare them for work and to be hired. And so it's also, there's a requirement that a percentage of disabled people be hired as well and put into the workforce. However, upon graduation and looking for a job, for people who are deaf and disabled, they meet with a lot of frustration in that process. It's the same with hearing people looking for jobs after graduation. However, the level of frustration on the deaf and disabled side is much higher. The number one issue that confronts these people is communication. And communication often ties to interpreting and interpreting services. We have some extremely skilled and talented people, but it's frustrating for them to be able to see their hearing counterparts move into the workforce where the deaf and disabled group do not have such an easy time. And it's very frustrating and very challenging, more so than what the hearing students face. And so I'd like to be able to make that path easier for deaf and disabled students looking for work. So the situation here is to help deaf students find employment. And I have to say that now is better than it was in the past. So for the past, people who graduated maybe in 1996 compared to now, it is much, much better than it was back in 1996. Coming into college and being able to select majors, there are more opportunities for the selection of majors than there was in the past. In the past, it was one major. You could choose art. And it was a situation where all deaf students must, if they go to college, they must study art. And they were very limited in what they were able to study. They weren't able to do a lot of other things. But for now, it's much better. There are things that are more open. Art is still available, but also working on computers, culinary school, business school, dental and medical school. These things are more open than they were. And so opportunities for employment and the types of jobs that deaf people would like are now much more accessible than they were in the past. So now for a deaf person to look and find a job, the challenge that they face is communication. Now, some deaf people do have good speech capabilities, and they may have an upper hand in those who do not and who use sign language as their primary mode of communication. They may be more easily hired, the people who are able to speak or have good speech capabilities, than those who are using sign language. And so a lot of times communication fails just simply due to the lack of people being able to understand sign language, and the sensitivity is just not there, and that people who have speech abilities or able to speak are oftentimes more looked upon. So at the deaf schools, the government policy has been to encourage education and to use whatever speech or implementation devices, cochlear implants, hearing aids, they are sent to have cochlear implants, and that once they have their cochlear implant surgery, then speech comes more easily to them, and that is the belief. And so a lot of times people are looked upon with cochlear implants and the ability to speak more so than someone who is not and uses sign language as their primary mode of communication. Now in high school, once people graduate from high school, people who are signers, or people who are also have the ability to speak, or then find themselves together studying at college. And when the time comes to look for a job, it's very different for these two groups of people. People who have speech capabilities oftentimes have an easier time finding a job than those who use sign language as their primary mode of communication, and that can be very frustrating. So in China, I'll talk a little bit later about this, but how is it that we can better advise and serve these people? But I'm going to hold off on that for just a little bit and move on to the next thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So Gao Wei, can you close your video? And
Thank
then
you.
we will ask Wei Wei to share about, yeah, Wei.
Yeah.
Let me ask to start video. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. It's a good day.
Yes.
Morning, early morning for you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes, and I apologize. My internet is a little off.
no problem, you're here today now, so that's wonderful. So Wei, both Amy's, Amy Kalmus and Amy Knopf, have visited your program and project, Voice of Hands. So additional with Gao Wei's presentation, can you share about accessibility for individuals who are deaf in China? How can we help people who are deaf in China have access for employment? Hold on, access for living independently. Can you share independently about the background of your organization and Voice of Hand and what you're doing to help improve that situation?
Yes. Okay. So I'm Wei, and I am from Beijing. I went to Gallaudet University in America in Washington, D.C., where I studied English, and then went on to, I got my bachelor's degree in digital videography. I worked at the Kendall School where I taught TV production, working with the kids who are deaf, working with deaf students there at the Kendall School. And I learned so much from that experience. Working in visual language, because the kids were able to see that and to be able to work visually with one another. And then studied photography, video editing, and I was able to teach that and help them. And that helped me then with the project, working with students so that they were then able to understand what responsibility looked like. I was in charge of supervising the deaf students on working projects. I did that for 7 years. I then decided it was time to go to the American University where I studied film production. And that was a very good learning experience. I got a second degree. I received my MFA in film and directing. I graduated from American University and then came back to China and worked for Voice of Hand. I was hired here in Zhuzhou, and that company, I made the decision to come here because it had recently just been established. We were setting up a VRS and VRI company, and I was thrilled with the technology. I felt the technology wasn't maybe enough, and I was able to bring my experience having been in America and having been an amazing experience with VRS and VRI and working with interpreters and learning from that experience. And so I was able to bring, again, what I learned in America and bring that back to China. And that being helping to set up and develop the technology with this company and wanting to make sure that customers know what VRS and VRI means. And so I do a lot of work with marketing in letting customers know what VRS and VRI mean. And we're trying to get that word out so that people who are deaf, as well as people who are hearing, because they are interested in this too, they are able to download the app And they like that world because they're able to be in contact and to be able to see, and the sign language that they're able to see is very, very clear, and it makes for a better life. And so there are job opportunities that improve, that there are job opportunities that then in turn help deaf people have a better life.
Can you explain also about the challenges with voice of hand as a new opportunity for people? What challenges do you experience as a business in China?
It's very challenging. It is very challenging here. In America, there were plenty of sign language interpreters who had a lot of experience. I knew interpreters who had more than 30 years of experience, and they had been working in the fields of BRS and BRI. And they had that experience and that knowledge. The knowledge that they held, that they possessed, it was rich. Here in China, interpreter training programs were just being established. And they've been maybe up and running maybe 10 years. And so we don't have enough training programs. We don't have enough interpreters, and the jobs that are available are very limited. Now, Voice of Hand hires sign language interpreters, and they tend to hire younger sign language interpreters, people who have just graduated from school. And the average interpreter working at Voice of Hand has a 2-year degree. They come to work for Voice of Hand, and then they start to learn. Plus, working and training in the language 3-4 years now, we see that they need that additional time to increase their training and experience. So challenges that we face here in China is that there are a variety of languages, sign languages that are used. And sometimes it may be that the interpreter struggles to understand what a deaf person is signing to them. And then the idea came about that could we pair a deaf interpreter with the hearing interpreter to help improve that communication process. And so far, it has worked pretty well. And then number 3, with the sign language interpreters, is getting them to stay at work, because this is hard work. And most of the time, it's hard to find, income is pretty low. Their ability to earn money is pretty low. It's very unfortunate the way things look right now. The interpreter programs are not providing enough support to their students.
Yes, I would agree with that. And then, Amy Kalmus, are you okay to keep interpreting for me, or do we want to switch and get Jenna on to voice?
I'm fine.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm wondering where are you do you most recruit your interpreters from? What schools do you recruit from? What schools do you recruit your interpreters from?
Well, it's important that we go to schools where deaf teachers are teaching, because we want to be able to emphasize, and we also want to be able to emphasize students to come to these schools. I'm thinking that the government should support, and there should be more marketing and outreach in terms of recruiting, and in particular with job opportunities, because right now that's limited, and that there should be an increase in funding with good resources. That would make it much easier to recruit students to become interested in becoming a sign language interpreter.
Right, right. Okay, I'm going to ask Jenna to come back on to interpret for me so I'm clear. Jenna, can you come back on? Thank you, dear. So I agree, Wei. It's thinking about the universities that are preparing future interpreters. The need is very great, and we know that this is an area of opportunity, and we hope that through our collaboration and partnerships we can share about and develop programs together that focus on how do you certify interpreters? What is the code of ethics for interpreters? What qualifications? And thinking about these areas so that it really becomes a professional career. And I think what I've seen in China, you know, the last 20 years, 10 years more so, is really shifting from the role of interpreters as volunteers who are helping in the community to saying, no, this is a professional career and we need to provide access and opportunity, not only in educational environments, but also in employment. And I think something that Voice of Hand is doing is, you know, thinking about who is the interpreter for a medical situation and how do they access then your services through Voice of Hand to ensure they have the best medical care. And then something that you shared about, it goes beyond employment, education, medical care. How does someone who is deaf communicate with their own family, their mom and their dad, and who maybe don't know sign language? I know that that has been a bridge that Voice of Hand has done, has provided opportunities for parents of young people who are deaf to actually be able to communicate together. And then again, we heard a story of how there was a fire at a home of an individual who was deaf and how he needed to use Voice of Hand to call and say his house was burning. And so we think about safety in everyday situations. And so we are so impressed with the work of Voice of Hand. And so thankful that you're here to share today about the program that is there. I know when we visited again, some of the technology at Voice of Hand is amazing. And the challenge now is to get the word out about the services that you provide so that deaf individuals know that these services are available, and to prepare the individuals who are deaf on how to use these services appropriately to their advantage, and then to recruit interpreters so that we have skilled interpreters for your services. You can have the best technology in the world, but if you don't have the people power and the skill set and the human resources of the interpreters, the technology doesn't work. Amy, do you have any reflections on our visit and time at Voice of Hands?
Well, first of all, I want to say that part of my research when I was in China was looking for and exploring for what kinds of services were available for individuals who are deaf. And I was really excited. Kathy and I were, it was kind of just happened out of luck that we found out about Voice of Hands. And
Destiny.
it was destiny.
It wasn't luck.
That was
destiny.
Destiny. That we just happened to find Voice of Hands and the work that they were doing. And really I worked as a VRS interpreter myself. And so I know the technology that's used in those settings here in the US. And so I thought and fully believe that the technology that I saw in China was amazing, just amazing. And I love the model that you have at Voice of Hands of deaf interpreters supporting hearing interpreters. Because I think that's, you know, I think now some of our companies in the US are starting to do that. But I think for your company, it's more common than what we have. And I made that comment a couple weeks ago and someone said, please explain why you think that is. I knew we would have this conversation. So I also want to go back to, I asked where you get your interpreters from for your company, your student interpreters. And I know that it's from Zhengzhou University, and Gabrielle Jones also put in the question and answer that the students come from Zhengzhou University, or yeah, Zhengzhou University. So I just wanted to ask if there were any other universities that you're starting to partner with for interpreter students.
The way,
I think there's a little bit of a delay. I think there's a delay, okay. Yeah, or delay, yeah. Are there other universities that you're working with? There may be some delay with our communication is not happening.
Okay, so I'll type that question to her, Amy.
Okay.
And let us think about, as we shared, thank you, Wei Wei. So this is Wei, our Wei, right, Ames?
I think it's with the
W.
Your sign name, your sign name is Wei, or just Wei?
Wei.
Yeah, no, in America, I just finger spell my name.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So if you can close down your video. Okay, bye. So interpreters, can you stay on? Thank you, Jenna. The next individual that we have invited to share tonight is really someone who is leading the way, not just in Hong Kong and in China, but globally. And when we think about employment, again, I want to reemphasize that we need to think about early childhood education, the significance of that, parent communication, and starting in kindergarten. How do we have students who are deaf become fully integrated into society? And as I have shared over the course of our 5 weeks, one of the greatest challenges is the negative attitude of people without disabilities towards individuals who are deaf or without a disability. And the social cultural barriers really impact all other areas. So Chris from Hong Kong, through his leadership role in research and development, has been working on a program that is phenomenal. So Chris, there you are. Good to see
you. Yes,
yeah,
good to
can
see
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just to check.
Yes, very clearly, Chris. It's very clear. And so our interpreter for you this evening is Jenna. And then this is in Zoom. And in Ding Talk, we have Kai and David. And then we have the Chinese Sign Language interpreters from Voice of Hand, who are helping our deaf audience in China participate. So could you share, Chris, about your amazing program that you have in Hong Kong? I know it's not perfect. We all have challenges, but both when Amy and I visited, it was amazing to see the work.
Amazing, yes.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, actually, for inviting me to share our work. So I'm Chris Yu. So I'm having short black hair with glasses, and I'm wearing a blue shirt with a little dots there. Okay, yeah. So my background is actually my office, very messy actually. Okay, yeah. So and this is my sign name, and it's C, and then yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's from my deaf colleague. They said I always smile, so
Yeah.
they yeah, emphasize my smiling. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, maybe I just have a short introduction about our program. Our program called the Bilingualism and Co-Enrollment in Depth Education Program. And actually, we started this work from 2006. Okay, so it's been like 14 years already. Yeah, and so we started from a kindergarten, and then a primary school, and then secondary school, and then now we have graduates from secondary school now, and so we started to support them in tertiary education. And actually, during that period of time, we also established the baby signing programs and the sign bilingual baby creches. Okay, yeah, that means it's from 6 months old to 2 years old.
Wow.
Okay.
Can you say the name of your school again? For some of the audience members missed the name of your school or your program. The name of your school, of your program?
SELCO, SLCO, do you mean that, or the actual school name?
The actual school name.
Oh, actual school name. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have now from babies. Okay, we have 5 baby creches adopting the sign bilingual approach. It's actually for hearing babies at most. But we have deaf babies included in those programs. Yeah. So this is from the Hong Kong Society for Protection of Children. Yeah. So they have all 5 baby creches adopting the approach, and so they are all ready to accept deaf babies in the program. Okay. And then we have the Peace Evangelistic Center Kindergarten. Yeah, and this is the kindergarten we have. So they serve children from age 3 to 6. And we have a primary school, the Oblate Primary School. So this is actually I mean, we now have the primary school children there. Yeah, and we have the secondary school program under the Notre Dame College, which is the one Kathryn and Amy visited.
Oh, yeah.
Before, yeah. And so actually we have this program, I mean, developed based on 2 major guiding principles. One of that is sign bilingualism. Another one guiding principle is co-enrollment. So that means we have both, we use both sign language and spoken language in the whole program for every lessons and for every activities actually. And so we, because we really want to have a true bilingual program, so we also have deaf people trained as deaf teachers, co-teach with the hearing teachers. And so we believe that actually with the sign model in class, children can acquire sign language much better than just having an interpreters there.
Mm-hmm.
And the deaf children and also hearing children actually can have direct communication with the deaf teacher using sign language. Okay, so actually all hearing children will learn sign language. Yeah, I mean during all lessons. Yeah. So there's a lot of translanguaging processes there.
Yeah. That really was the most impressive, Chris, that everybody signed. So
yeah.
you didn't know who was hearing or who was deaf. The communication just was fluid. It was just flowing, and it was amazing.
Yeah, because we just hope that when we first developed this program, actually, when we talked to the deaf colleagues, one of the emphasis that really impressed me, they always say that even for deaf students, they want them to have the same experience as all hearing students. And so they, when the teachers of the hearing schools always ask us what else they cannot do, what else that we need to have exemption, our deaf colleagues will say, let them trial for everything. Unless, yeah, when you're doing assessment or examination, to be fair, they have to get some accommodation. But
Right.
in general, for every activities, they just want all deaf children to participate, even for 普通话 lessons. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
one of the things that I was really impressed with when we were there is that I believe it was you or maybe some of the teachers were commenting that it builds confidence even within the hearing students, because if they are shy and they don't want to get up in front of the class and speak, then they also have the option to use sign language to present to their class, or if a deaf kid wants to use their voice, that the language, that the student has that autonomy to choose the language that they most feel comfortable with, regardless whether they're deaf or hearing. So I thought that was beautiful philosophy.
I think now we now always promote the concept of universal design for product development, but I think we also believe that there should be a universal design for education.
Yeah.
And I think actually every children, they just have different personality, they just have different preference,
right,
during the learning process. And actually we find lots of hearing children are actually very visual. They yeah, they prefer to learn through visual materials, and so sign language for them actually is advantage to them, I mean, during the learning process. I can share one story. I have a hearing girl. Yeah, actually, she joined our program from primary 1, that is age 6. Okay, and then after when she graduated from the primary school, she actually also her parents insist to follow our deaf students to study in our secondary school. And so actually last year, she was graduated from the secondary school. Okay, and her mission and vision is to, and now she's under the training of preschool education.
Oh.
Why is that? Because her vision and mission is to be a teacher for the deaf in the sign bilingual program. And so he was very shy and timid when she was a primary school child, but she liked sign language very well. And after 12 years, actually, she became the leader of the school. And she is very outspoken now.
wow.
Okay. And so I think, and also I think through this process, as Amy and Kathryn observed, actually they have very good relationship with our deaf students, and I'm glad that they also developed that sort of mission to support the deaf community. And they believe that even with the deaf students in their classroom learning together, they can still learn well. They are not pulling down from them. Yeah, and another story is that we have a boy. Yeah, he has said that has a very good academic performance in his primary school studies. So all the teachers will ask him to go to a very top, secondary school, but he insists to follow us. And he was interviewed by a media, by a newspaper reporter. And then he said, I believe that if I learn diligently, I can still work well, I can still perform well. But he really think that learning together with deaf students is his preference. And so we observed him for like 6 years after for his secondary education. And finally, we are glad that actually he graduated with a very good result. And so he is now admitted to the university studying engineering.
Wow. That's amazing.
And he is still coming to support our sign interpretation work.
Wow.
We have a question actually from one of our attendees, and they're wondering, where do you find your qualified deaf teachers from? Is there a deaf education program in Hong Kong that's specifically for bilingual education, or how do you provide that training?
Oh, I'm sorry to say that actually there's no such deaf education program in Hong Kong, even an elective. I mean, an elective in special education training. I mean, I know that they, the Education Institute at the university try to have that elective, but actually no one choose the elective because the population of deaf people in Hong Kong is too small.
Yeah.
And so everyone is, I mean, prefers to study about autistic, or autism, study about dyslexia. Yeah, but yeah, not too many people would like to spend their time on deaf education elective. And so it's hard to develop a formal program in Hong Kong about deaf education. It's just, I mean, submerged in inclusive education programs, in special education program, introducing deaf education, I mean, just in a few lessons, something like that. So yeah, and also for deaf people, actually, I mean, for a long-standing problem of, I mean, communication accessibility, because we only adopt oral approach in Hong Kong for the last many years. And so actually they don't have good academic performance or background to receive education training. And of course, communication barrier is one of the reasons why they maybe cannot receive education training in Hong Kong. But we insist to have deaf people involved in the program. We think that this is crucial.
Right.
So even though we know that there will be some sort of, I mean, a disagreement about the arrangement, but we insist to do that. We just try to recruit some deaf adults who have potential to be a teacher, and we recruit them. We train them up with our internal deaf education training program. There's a diploma, okay, and then we train them up with Chinese and English literacy. And we also have other training, like sign language teaching, something like that. So we all do it within our own jurisdiction. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is so important right now, because it's a full circle. We can't just employ people who are deaf when they're adults. We have to prepare them in their educational journey for when they get there. And, you know, as you say, we have to have deaf role models who have the natural Chinese Sign Language. And that's something Amy and I have been working on. And we have our 3 deaf interns in Minnesota right now, and our deaf visiting scholar, Xiao Rong. I want to give a shout out to Xiao Rong because of her amazing work. And it takes time, but each individual has the possibility of being a change agent.
Yeah.
And so we really, you know, yes, we only have 4 people here right now, but they are for people of potential for impacting change. And I know the 3 young deaf interns are like, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do. And we're like, we know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
We have a lot of dreams. And I think through the international partnership between Hong Kong and mainland China and Amy's program, hopefully we can help to build programs that promote deaf leadership, that promote deaf teachers in the schools. We need to have deaf teachers whose first language is the natural Chinese Sign Language. And really, through that shift, then employment will be impacted to have them have more opportunities. But it's so integrated, like Wei from Voice of Hand had said, we need to have sign language interpreters. And so that's why I think your program also holds so much potential, because the hearing students who are learning the sign language, hopefully some of them will choose a career path in interpreting. Or like you shared about the young man who went into engineering. Okay, that's great. It's not sign language interpreting. Who knows what he'll design in his career in engineering that may benefit people who are deaf in their communication or people with disabilities. So kudos to you and your program.
Yes.
Both Amy and I.
Amazing. Yeah.
I think the mindset building their mind is more important than the actual skills related to sign language. I think once they got that concept, I mean, to treasure or to appreciate the strength of deaf people and sign language, I think in future, in any circumstances, they will use their own knowledge to contribute to deaf community. I have that confidence.
I know you do, Chris, and you work so hard on your program. So for our participants, it was awesome this year at the Zero Project Conference. Chris was able to come and share a presentation at the UN about his program, and we were in Vienna together. Last week, Martin Essel from the Zero Project Conference shared about the Zero Project. So Chris is one of the living testimonies of one of the projects, exemplary projects that Chris shared about the educational program in Hong Kong as a model. And just kudos to you, Chris. And I'm sorry we can't visit you again soon.
I know.
I just want to supplement one information when you talk about our deaf training. And finally, actually, through these 14 years, we have 4 deaf colleagues who have gone through the education training and become the registered teachers now. And we just have 1 deaf colleague completing the preschool early childhood education training and become the registered teacher. But yeah, with lots of difficulties, but yeah, finally, yeah. And we have a few of them completing our professional diploma in sign interpretation.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So I think we don't have the very good environment or background when we started this program, but I just want to encourage all of you. I mean, in this webinar, even you are, I mean, the environment is in a disadvantaged situation, but with that persistence and vision, yeah, I'm sure you can also develop very brilliant programs in future. But it may take 10 years or 20 years.
Yeah.
Frank.
But Kathy's been working in China for 20 years, so I mean, we could see it in our lifetime.
Yeah.
I imagine we'll work for another 40 years, Kathy.
40 years. We'll get on and say, what? With our hearing aids, we'll need the sign language ourselves.
Yeah.
So I do want to ask Gao Wei or Wei, do you have any other comments at the end of this session? Do you want to open up your computer and add anything?
Yeah, we just have a few minutes left. I know there are other questions in the chat. I'm sorry, Jenna, go ahead. I know there are other questions in the chat, but I'm not sure that we have time to answer questions, but let's give Gawei any final comments.
Yeah, thank you, Amy, for joining. So Amy, you can voice for Gawei. Gawei, do you have any last minute things to say? Any feedback?
Short comment, yeah.
Yeah, last year with Wei and Chris, and the comments that were made, not last year, but the comments that were made by Wei and by Chris, talking about education and language for people who are deaf, and the focus being language first. Language is often is most oftentimes the problem. So if we can solve the language problem, that's going to help us to change deaf people's lives in China very, very much.
Oh, beautiful, right?
And that's why before I was an art major. And then I shifted my studies to focus on linguistics, a very intense study on linguistics. And some people often ask me, why is it that I got a master's degree in art, but now focusing on Chinese Sign Language linguistics? And the reason being is what I just said. And so when coming to America after graduating and starting the process with my studies in art, and then seeing the research and looking for people to study, there was no deaf research happening.
Mm-hmm.
I was the only one. And I started that process first wanting to make a dictionary that was truly for deaf people to be able to use that. Because prior to that, hearing people had made any kind of books or dictionaries for sign language. So I wanted to take that on and to be able to make that. And we've been working on that now more than 10 years. So we've been focusing on this dictionary. And we really want to make sure that this is a dictionary made by deaf people for deaf people, so that they're able to learn their native language, and that hearing people then could learn Chinese Sign Language as well. So we want it to be inclusive. We want it to include teachers and people who work and help with deaf people and work in education. And it will also help to improve the job situation as well. So
That's wonderful.
for me, that is my hope, that we will see that at some point.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for Chris and Gawei and Wei. Thank you so much for joining in tonight's session. We really appreciate your expertise, sharing your knowledge, your experience. It's been really wonderful this evening. It's the last session.
It is. I'm a little sad.
But I think at the same time, the 5 month, oh my God. The 5 times we've had meetings have really demonstrated it's possible. We can have more discussions, more conversations about how to work together, how to continue the conversation and to improve the situation in China. And again, I want to emphasize and say the power of people-to-people exchange together is so important. And so thank you everybody for joining us this evening.
Yeah.
It's time to finish.
Yes, it was good to see you again.
Thank you. Everybody. We'll share more information later about other opportunities.
So
Okay.
thank you. Bye.
Love you, love you, love you. Bye-bye. Thank you.